Thanks for coming back, and welcome new friends to The In-Between. This is a podcast where we share and talk about third culture and cross-cultural experiences.
Today, we're going to talk about the work environment and culture in the USA. So relax, grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's clock in. Working. It was a hard-working week. How was yours?
Not too bad. Actually, it was my last week. I'm changing jobs and starting somewhere fresh on Monday.
Nice. Back in the day, I remember when we were working in the US, it was a different vibe.
Yeah, both of us right now, we are working in Asia. Our work experience back in the United States is a past memory.
It is.
And today we're going to be, reminiscing a little bit about what it was like, what our experiences were like, and how we felt that culture looked like.
It's totally different, I can guarantee you guys. I remember when we were working in the States, well, that was like at least decades ago.
For me, not too long ago, I would say about 4 years ago. You and I both worked in different industries, so
that's true.
Perhaps the culture is a little bit different. And also depends on where the headquarters of the company is. Japanese-owned company in the US, then could be different working culture there, although the policies would be American.
I'm just wondering that how many years have you worked in the USA?
If I count full-time jobs, I would say 12 plus years.
That's a long time.
Plus some part-time, some internships.
Yeah, we're going to talk it all. For me, it's actually quite simple. I only worked 1 year in the United States, and the rest is in school, as on campus.
I know as a foreign student, the options are quite limited during your college experiences and even afterwards, because getting that
legally, though.
Legally, sure.
We're not going to talk about something that is illegal. I mean,
that's a whole other topic that we're not here to discuss today.
I know, we're not discussing that today.
Getting a working visa in any country is naturally a challenge.
Naturally a challenge, yeah. But if any possibility of getting a working visa in a foreign country, total respect on you, because you had to work hard and prove yourself in order to get that.
Among the time you were working in the US, what industries did you work in?
I was working in the retail business for one of the apparel for a car company. That was a different experience to begin with, because I got to learn a lot of high-end company culture. Mm-hmm. And that actually helped me to build up my work ethic and also with the communication skills, especially in retail business that I have to communicate with different people from different countries. That was my first job.
Right. If I recall, your location was on that famous strip in Hawaii.
Kalakaua.
Right. So most of your customers there would be tourists.
80%. Mainly from Japan, Korea, and some of them from mainland US.
Do you think it affected your day-to-day company culture? Because your customers are not like the local people living there. You might have to be more versed in speaking different languages, making conversation about where they're from.
Yeah, great question. You have to be in a total different personality to sell it to the tourist compared to sell your products to the locals, because different language for sure. For the record, I learned a lot of Japanese conversation from that job. I can still hold a simple conversation with the Japanese people right now because of that job.
I mean, if a lot of your clients are going to be from Japan, then that essentially kind of shapes, the retail staff there to adapt in that way, right?
It is. And most of my colleagues are actually from Japan. 1 or 2 of them were like mixed.
Let's talk a little bit more about what was the expectations from the parent company. Were you expected to work overtime? Did you have long hours? What were some of the policies you had to deal with?
Actually, no, not at all. Because they were like clock in, clock out kind of a system. So if you work 8 hours, then you can just, get out of the work. So
I see.
It was really, really scheduled. That was my first job. So I have to say I was still learning. And of course, I got some of the conflict with my colleagues back then in terms of sales, because I did not know the hidden rules of doing a retail business. I wouldn't call it I steal somebody else's sales, because I was doing it more in the obvious way. I was kind of a really determined person in order to get my sales up.
Since I've never really worked too much in sales, I don't really understand this culture behind stealing someone else's.
It's kind of things that I am actually embarrassed to talk about, but I actually feel really sorry for the colleague. I should have apologized to them. Sometimes because in the retail business, you take turns to make your sales to the customer. If you don't get your chance to sell anything to the customers that in your term, then you have to wait for the next round. But back then, I thought it was a turn base. So even though he or she helped me to make that sale, I thought that was my sale. And then they were like, okay, you're new, then I'll just give that sale to you.
I see.
Does it make sense to you?
Because I'm guessing whoever rings them up at the system is the one who gets credit for the sale.
Of course, you have to punch in your number before you cash it out.
And it's not like you can input who assisted you during the sale.
We don't know each other's number, to be honest with you.
Right,
Only
right.
the supervisor knows. Yeah.
Okay. Got a good picture of what your job looked like there.
Yeah, that was a fun experience, to be honest. But I do seriously treasure about that job because that was the first job that got me into the society. And then I still have customers. We still keep in touch until now. How about you, man? Well, which industry were you working in the United States?
My major during university was finance. So I ended up working for a nationwide mortgage lender. I worked in real estate. My first job there was as a underwriter, and I did it for 3 years. Since it was a nationwide company, there was quite a rigid set of rules. So there would be this analysis of how many mistakes we made versus how much work we got done. Overall, I think I was just not a match for that type of working environment. There was little to do with relations with our clients. A lot of it was automated. It felt very corporate. Although we had relation with people in our office, outside of that, the best employees were those who were closest to being a robot.
Really?
Go there, do your work efficiently and accurately, hit your targets, clock out and go home.
That sounds like an Asian company.
It was designed to be efficient.
Okay.
So I did that for a while. After 3 years, I realized it probably wasn't a good match, although the money was pretty good, especially as a job right out of college. And especially living in Hawaii, it's expensive. Yeah. But after that, I started looking for jobs again. This time I went into the education industry.
Which you are still right now?
I think a lot of it is to do with my own family, because a lot of my family, at least on my mother's side, have been in the education industry. And the company I ended up going to was a university, a Japanese-owned university in Hawaii.
Okay.
So while we had to adhere to, U.S. HR policies, the management was Japanese.
That's quite different.
I ended up being there for 9 years before I left and came to Japan. It was a nice combination of American culture and Japanese culture. We had a lot of groups from Japan and Asia coming to Hawaii to learn at our college. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that you sometimes have to stay in that school or maybe go to school on the weekends in order to, I would say, host some of the events for the student group.
Yeah, when a group was there, basically I was on call.
When the teacher for the group doesn't have any English skill, how do you guys communicate with them?
Luckily, everyone in my office could speak Japanese, including myself.
Okay, that's easier.
And if the group was from another country, they would definitely have to send someone who could speak English. Swinging back to the culture, I would say it not only depended on the administration, but a lot on who was running HR at the time. So we had several HR directors come and go during the 9 years I was there. Some were hired from the US mainland. At certain periods during my time there, the expectations were stricter or more lax than others. For example, cracking down on the clock in time. And, some companies will have a policy that you need to be clocked in while you're sitting at your desk, where others just have like a tap-in system at the front door. When are you expected to be in your seat by 8 o'clock? Is it actually enforced? Depends on the company culture.
So sometimes it feels like a really Asian company. Another time it was feeling like more an American companies.
Career opportunity-wise, it was more American, where if you wanted to be promoted, you would need to apply for it.
As I remember, this is not your only... What were the jobs that you worked for before college when you were students?
Well, before my full-time jobs, I did high school summer jobs, such as working at a restaurant, serving tables, washing dishes. I also worked at the university. I worked for house cleaning. I worked for the school newspaper for a while.
That was with me.
Yes, yeah. John and I used to work together at the college.
Yeah, with two more buddies.
That was a fun job. We would typically wake up around 1 a.m. in the morning to deliver thousands of school newspapers across not only the campus, but parts of the city.
Yeah, because there are different campuses throughout the city.
Other than that, some jobs to do with maybe education, working with ESL students.
You actually had educational job experience already back then.
A little bit. And then I tried to get as much experience as I could through internships as well, working with some financial companies. I even worked for an airline company for a while in their process improvement department, which felt innovative, efficient, and a lot of work in Excel.
I see. But that's actually what finance people should do, right? You guys are so good at it.
Some of the seniors I work with, it's like they spoke another language with all those formulas in automation.
Really?
And that was interesting. What reminds me is just some of the interview questions they would ask, because I almost feel like you can tell a company culture by the type of interview questions, with more critical thinking questions. In this situation, what you would do.
I see.
Yeah.
I actually have this question for you. How much difference is working experience and culture between now and then in your industry? Focusing on the education industry based on what you know right now.
There's a lot more emphasis on frameworks and your skill set. There's a little stronger emphasis on certifications. Before, maybe going to university for 4 years and maybe having a master's was enough. But these days, there's so much technology also involved in education that you want to be a little bit more specified in what type of skill sets you have. I've noticed in my recent interviews versus my interviews maybe 10 plus years ago, there's more targeted questions.
So do you think that more of a senior employees adopting this type of culture, can they adopt it? And can you adopt it? Because we're like, in our age, we're sort of like in between, right?
Right. I just feel like as the world has gotten more complicated, the requirements from your employer will also kind of match that. So of course they want a good employee who can build strong relationships with the team, right? I think that will always be there if you're in a position where you have to work with other people, which is typically the case. But on top of experience, I think the emphasis on specific skill sets is growing more and more. Get those internships in and maybe even get a certification or two in specific skill sets. So when they start applying, they have some experience to talk about and can back up technical knowledge with actual time spent using whatever system or applications.
I see. So it sounds like in your industry, there are more people, there are more requirements for one specific position. You have to be able to do different things besides your hired position.
A lot of jobs seem to require some type of portfolio, a book of your work that you've done so far.
For me, it's not that much. For coders, engineers, marketing related people. So if you have an opportunity to move back to the US for work, what do you think your challenges will be?
Skills versus seniority.
Oh, that's a big time.
Right?
I agree with you. Yeah.
So when you're looking for a job in the US, they really prioritize, can you do the job and can you do it well?
Yes.
What can you contribute to this organization? Whereas in Japan, there's a lot more emphasis on loyalty and seniority, how long you've been there with the company. I know, for example, some companies here, they may even hire someone who they've known from college. So let's say if the hiring team consists of your seniors during university, you go there and you were contributing to whatever team or team sports you were in university, and you go there and you're like, hello, senior, I'm here now to serve under this company, under your leadership. Yeah. It'd be like, yes, you were a great team player back in university on the sports team or whatever. Right. We welcome you to come on board. It's a lot of emphasis on the relationship.
The same as Taiwan, though. Skills versus seniority. Yeah, because they sometimes relationship is a key and most important things in between workers and workers from different companies in any business. It's not about how it's also about how well you can do the job, but that's actually based on the relationship of you and other people or in different companies in the same industry.
Mm-hmm.
But within the company, seniority is actually one of the biggest factor of how people look at you in the industry as well. So if you serve for the company for 20 years, then they will say, oh, you know the company very well. But sometimes if you're not skillful enough, you might not have a good relationship with your team members because they might look down on you, this kind of thing. It's really complicated over here, in my opinion. I agree with you, though. Seriously.
At least in Japan, if you stay past working hours and your boss there sees that, oh, he's so dedicated to the company, that might actually be a positive thing. Whereas maybe in the US, for example, in many companies, if you're staying there past your clock out time, your boss may think that you're not very efficient and cannot get your work done during working hours.
That actually happened in Taiwan maybe about 10 years ago. But now, in the past 10 years, I think people heavily influenced by American culture came back to the Taiwan for work. More of American working culture has heavily influenced the local businesses. So we don't do that anymore. More like in China or something. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Seriously, skills versus seniority. That's for sure.
What do you think, though? If you had the opportunity to, move back to the USA for work, would you? What do you think would be some of the perks and advantages?
For me, I think is the skill of cross-cultural communication, because we know what's the culture in Asia, and we know what's the culture in the United States. Then we can be like chameleon, switching back and forth and trying to find middle way to communicate with both sides.
I see.
That's what we did not have. Well, at least I did not have, because I was learning most of my skill set and working ethics in the United States. But in the past 10 years, I've learned the Asian way over here on this side of the earth. So I think right now I'm able to do it in the United States is the cross-cultural communication. Yeah. How about you?
Well, for me, I would say that I've been lucky in terms of the companies I've been able to work for. While in Japan, they've been more Western compared to kind of traditional Japanese companies. So even if I move back, I think the overall culture wouldn't change that much, as I already work with quite a diverse group of people.
Okay.
For me, I think some of the incentives would be more about just the financial aspects of working in US, probably higher rate of compensation, the ability to contribute to an IRA for retirement, just some of the general policies that will lead up to retirement, because again, I'm not in my 20s anymore. I have to think about the end game as well.
Yeah.
And at this point, since I've developed my skill set, there might be better opportunities back in the US. Whereas while there are great opportunities in Japan, it's probably a little bit more limited compared to back in the States.
Mm-hmm.
I've prioritized the location of where I work rather than the opportunity.
I see.
So some people will travel to whatever destination they need to go to for whatever best opportunities are out there, whereas I'm only allowing myself one city in whatever opportunities are available there. And, I really enjoy living in Tokyo. I'm very satisfied with what I've been able to do so far in terms of my career.
You're really back to your roots, being a Japanese person.
While there are some advantages to go back to the USA for work, they're not strong enough for me to push me to make that change.
I see. Okay, so we're towards the end of the episode. Any perspective and thoughts that you want to share with us?
Of course. I want to talk about the commute, because the commute in a bigger city like Tokyo versus maybe somewhere in the mainland, US mainland, might be a little bit different, right? For example, it's very common to use public transportation in Asia, but perhaps in the States, it's very common, at least maybe 70% uses their own car to go to work. Not because they couldn't use public transportation like a bus or maybe the train in New York, it's that they choose to use their own car because they want their own individual space. In my mind, I think it's the culture over there to have your own space, your own elbow room, your own music, and you want to have that space as long as you can, even during your morning and commute after work.
I see.
If you have the option to, and many people will choose to drive to work if they can.
In Asia, not too much for driving because we have a really strong and well-developed public transportation system.
That's probably because of the culture as well, right? People don't mind to travel together with other strangers on the way. If you ask me if I enjoy traveling on a crowded train in the morning, not really, but I'm okay with it. Would it be nice to drive to work? Yes, but I don't feel the necessity to.
For me, it's in terms of transportation, it's all about moped. Because back then, when I was living in the States at a really young age, I did not have the experience of riding mopeds in Taiwan. On the other hand, that a lot of people at the same age, when they were in college, they pretty much just ride mopeds to everywhere. To school, back to dorm, or back to their rented house, or even go back home, just moped everywhere. But I did not have that experience, so I rely so much right now. I don't have a car, I ride mopeds pretty much everywhere, anywhere in the country. A round trip of Taiwan with my moped by myself. So in terms of transportation, I would say it's a different experience, work-related as well, because I ride my moped to work instead of just driving or taking public transportation.
Using those kind of means of transportation are efficient, right? If you can just use your own vehicle to get there.
Yeah, it is really efficient. I can probably get to work from my house in 10 minutes, I would say. And usually, if I take public transportation, it will probably take me like 20 minutes.
If I was in the States, I would get a car just because that's what the infrastructure supports. And I don't know, when I'm in the States, I feel like the car is part of my home. I have my specific coffee mug that I'll take with me, my gadgets to listen to whatever audio I want to. It's like almost part of your routine. And that's my space. Nice. My sanctuary.
Palace.
My palace. My mobile palace.
Right.
And I don't know, for some reason, while being in Tokyo, I don't have that urge to maintain that.
Well, because you don't have your private space in the public transportation.
Right. And I wonder why I don't want to have it back right now. I guess because, driving in Tokyo is more stressful than driving, at least driving in Hawaii was not very stressful.
It's so different. It is so different.
I'm always afraid I'll scratch the vehicle whenever I rent one here.
You don't want to do that. Especially it's kind of expensive to fix a car in Japan, in my opinion. So for me, I think working in Asia and the United States actually giving me a good opportunity to be, like I said, a chameleon living in between two cultures. That I think it is a really good opportunity for you out there, for the audience, if you want to communicate or get to know people from different culture, is working as a trader for any type of a merchandise or working in the trading business, because you can get to know a lot of people, not only locally, but internationally. So as we talk about work environment and culture in the United States, I think this is not only going to be narrowed in the United States, but also expanded to different countries as well. Especially that we're talking about cross-cultural experiences for this channel. Because working in the trading business, you not only need to communicate with your local companies and the local factories, if you're in a certain industry, and communicate with them in a local way, but also talking to people internationally and working with them in a more international way, but more of their way. If you're working with Indian people, then you have to talk to the people from India in their perspective, to understand their perspective. Or if you're working with people from Europe, then you have to know their local culture and how they do things as well. So we're only talking about working in the United States for this episode, but this idea and this perspective is for all over the world. And in order to actually build up your career, then you have to know a lot of different things from different cultures from your point of view. And also, you gotta have the empathy to talk to other people. And this is actually taking a big part in cross-cultural communication as well. I'm not saying I'm an expert of that, but I'm still learning so much empathy and how to talk to different people from different culture as well. But this is actually something that we can work on. We can all work on a smooth business, or in order to have smooth relationship with different types of people.
That's a really good point. Come to think of it, emailing in a business scene is also a prominent part of working in different cultures. When I communicate in English with clients from the US or a Western culture, I'm very efficient in how I communicate with them, either verbally or in my written language. Whereas if I'm communicating with someone from Japan or Asia, I'll be much more
conservative,
much more polite in the way I compose my emails. I may even talk about the weather or the season that we're in.
Okay.
To at least make it feel more personal before I get to the actual topic.
I would do the same thing, to be honest with you.
I think that's a major cultural difference when working in the US, as you can be much more quick and efficient with your communication. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think this is actually not only narrowed it to the United States, but in order to have different type of working style in the world, I think we all need to adopt, because this is not only about the United States right now.
Of course.
Yeah. We're going to talk about working in different cultures and countries in the future, especially focusing on Japan and Taiwan, because that's where we are working in right now. So stay tuned, and I think we're about to end the job for today.
Hope you can share your cultural shock experiences with us in terms of your working culture wherever you are. Yeah. Thanks for listening to the episode today, and we'll see you next time.
Clock out.
Shoots.